The views, information, and opinions expressed during the following program are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent the views of Access Communications, its representatives, or its employees.
Welcome to Planting Seeds, Philanthropy in Saskatchewan, a show where we connect you to the donors and charities making an impact across the prairies. I'm your host, Victor Roman Morrow, with the South Sask Community Foundation. I hope you enjoy the show. Thanks for joining us today. I'm joined today with Angela Ricci from the Autism Resource Centre. We were actually going to do this episode a year ago.
Right.
We weren't able to make it work, so I'm really glad that we were able to reschedule it this year and for you to be here. I think it's a really important topic to talk about. So maybe without further ado, do you want to maybe just let people know a little bit about yourself, your role at the centre, and what the centre does?
Yeah, so my name's Angela Ricci. I've been with the Autism Resource Centre's executive director for 3 years, but prior to that, I was on the board for 12 years.
Oh.
So the reason why I became involved with the Autism Resource Centre is because I was working for Crown Life and Farm Credit Canada for several years. And I was working with the Autism Resource Centre helping adults find meaningful work within the organization. So I had a connection that way, which then led me onto the board and then sort of became a bit more of a passion of mine and then joined as executive director when that opportunity opened up.
So that's an interesting story to me. So if you don't mind it, maybe before we talk more about the centre, just what was it like for you kind of jumping from, I guess, like the corporate world into the nonprofit world?
I think for me, I think it was a great thing personally, because I had seen how organizations were trying to be philanthropic and some of the things they were doing for the community. And then I went to the other side of it. I'm like, oh, okay. I know there's people out there who want to give.
Yeah.
I know there's organizations who have this design to invest in the community. We have to give them a good reason why to do it, and we have to bring them up to date. So I had that. And then the other thing is, I think coming from a bit of a business background, I was able to bring some of that into the organization as well. And especially after watching documentaries like UnCharitable, I had read the book, I thought, I think for me, the profit and the nonprofit or the for-benefit world have to have a little bit more. I think they can be more aligned. They don't have to be as separated as people think.
Yeah, and even just to note that too, because that UnCharitable movie, and we've mentioned it before on this show, and I think it's a really good topic, is that people maybe don't realize this, but the reality is a nonprofit organization is trying to speak in the exact same airwaves and airspace as a for-profit organization. The difference is a for-profit one, we never look at a for-profit and say you're spending too much in advertising if there's a return to it.
Yeah.
But in the nonprofit side of things, you will say that even if there is a strong return from whatever that investment is. So even just like from that basic aspect, you're right, there's certain things maybe even publicly we look at that don't align perfectly, but there actually is a lot more in common. There's a lot of the same needs from both sectors, as far as like you both need sustainable employees, you both need a long-term strategy that's impactful and effective for whatever your mission is. You both need you need awareness. You need people to know who you are, otherwise it's hard to exist, right? And
we both are helping the economy of our areas.
Absolutely.
So one might be adding to the economic balance by paying an employee so they can have but the other side of it is I'm keeping people out of hospitals. I'm helping, keep them off the streets or whatever the case might be. So I think we have to change our language. I mean, that's one thing from UnCharitable for sure, is maybe we just need to stop calling ourselves a not-for-profit. Maybe it's just like for benefit, or we are profitable. We have to measure our profits a little bit differently, but we are adding profits to the economy.
Oh, 100%. Actually, we just had a conversation right before with the South Saskatchewan Independent Living Centre, and I don't know what exactly was being quoted, but just like research shows that there can be like a 13-to-1 return on investment.
Right.
I know with
Yeah.
with some other organizations, like with youth mentoring organizations, have seen numbers like 18-to-1 or 21-to-1. So like those are things that are tangible long term that do have that economic impact. It's not just, like you said, it's not just like giving, it's actually giving and receiving at the exact same time.
I think we've modeled it to a point where we're just these little side organizations. We just kind of do this. We could, give us a pat on the head and good job, guys. And I'm like, no, we need to be sitting at the table with everyone else and stop defining ourselves as, the cheap, underpaid employees, organizations. I think we have to redefine ourselves, and we have to look at ourselves very differently.
Valuing it very differently, right?
Yeah.
And then respecting it in a different way, I think would be fair to say. And whatever that final way looks like, we don't know. But there's definitely, like I say, it's like it's working pretty well, but we can always make it greater.
Yeah.
So
it's changing the language, changing the way we look at things. Yeah.
So with the Autism Resource Centre itself, can you let us know a bit about, I know there's a lot that goes on. So we've got some time. So
good.
Like what do the operations look like? What are the programs being served? Who do they serve? Things like that.
So the one thing about us, compared to some other nonprofits in our agencies, is we were grassroots. 5 families, it's the early 70s. They have children that are diagnosed with autism. They're worried their children will be institutionalized because there are no supports really built yet. So they decided to build it themselves. So, and from that grew more diagnosis, more attention to it. And then slowly government then started paying attention to us and then giving us some money for programming. We currently, 25% of all we do though is still by donations and raising money, grants and stuff. 75% is sustainable funding right now, as long as nothing changes at the government level. That's how we differ a little bit from some of the other agencies that were more driven by the government saying we need to fill this gap. For 50 years, we've been working with autistic individuals in Regina and surrounding area. And we have built over 20 services and programs that we deliver with a staff of about 15. In the summer, because of our summer program and the intensity of that, we do hire about 55 more people, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in depth. So really our goal is to meet people where they're at and then help support them in building as much independence as possible, feeling like they belong to their community, and and feeling like they're a valuable member of society. So we do that really in 5 divisions. Our first is life skills. So that could be anywhere from cooking to socialization, a number of programs there. And then next is employment. We have another number of employment programs under that division. And so again, for some people, it's helping them in their jobs already, maybe helping around education. And for others, it's really just finding them their first job experience. And it might be something as 1 day a week, again, wherever they're at and how we can help them. And then we have a mental wellness program. So we're very lucky that we got funding for that. So it's free mental health counseling as well as support groups. So our members have access to that. And then we have a summer program, a very intensive therapeutic summer program that I'd like to talk about a little bit more in depth. But then the other one we support is a supported living program. It's a very small one, but it's gotten it's sort of our introduction to a supported living situation where we think we're going to have to grow a little bit more given what our needs of our members are. We currently serve about close to 300 people a year. We had a 33% increase in intakes, not diagnoses, intakes. The person coming in for intakes and their background has changed significantly. There's a lot of adult diagnosis where before we used to get children who were diagnosed and they would grow and then they would come to us, especially in adulthood for some of these programs. But with a changing landscape, it means that we have to respond in a different way. If you're 40 or 30 and you just realized you had autism, sometimes there's a lot of figuring things out from the past that you're trying to figure out in order to give you a better sense of your future. We also support parents and caregivers where we can. So that's kind of where we're sitting right now. Okay. And I can tell you a little bit more about our future if you're interested about hearing that now or
well, I have a couple questions first, and then let's talk about the future a bit. So just around the membership, because you mentioned that you serve about 300 people. So would that kind of be the membership, or just how many people are members? What does that?
So membership comes in different forms. So we call them supporting members, which just might be a donor or a parent or a family member. And then there's participating members. Okay. And the 300 that are more participating members. So they would be people who have taken a program, have come and done an intake. I mean, the summer program alone has about 85 children that go through it. So, and then other programs, like I said, some would take 10, 12 programs in the year, and others would, it just depends on what their needs are. And in 2006, I believe, the Sask Health Authority opened up the Autism Centre for Children. Prior to that, we were focusing on children, adults, and everything. And the Autism Centre asked us if we would focus on adults then, like do education program training for that. And we said yes. However, we kept the summer program because of the intensity, and it was just something that we had done for years and it worked. So they continue to support us on that, although the numbers are changing quite drastically there as well. So that kind of, and then of course there's parents that will come to like parent support groups or sometimes with the counseling sessions. So all in all, we're probably close to 300.
Okay, no, that's fantastic.
Just participating members, right? And then the donors and the other supporters and stuff surround those. Yeah,
that's fantastic. So I can see how you mentioned like 13 staff, but I know we'll learn more about like the higher numbers. And when you say that, I can see how there's probably, I'm sure in my head, I kind of have an idea of how that works a little bit. Another question I have too, just because it's kind of, I think, an interesting point, because you mentioned that, historically you used to have people kind of come and like be diagnosed as children and come in, but now you're seeing more adults being diagnosed. So I guess kind of two questions to this is one, and I think this answers it, but I'm assuming you work with people that are kind of at almost any point of the spectrum of autism then, hey?
Correct.
And then also, just with the adult diagnosis, is that becoming something more common just because, is it due to like reduced stigma or?
Yeah, I think the whole, because so many people are focused on ADHD right now, and so they've kind of dabbled in, figuring that out for themselves. Some of that has led into, oh, it's not ADHD, or it is ADHD, and by the way, we're detecting there might be autism as well. So I think just society is using terminology like neurodiverse, ADHD, and people are becoming more aware of it. So now they're starting to dig. I had one fellow, he sits on my board, and I said, what caused you to go get this diagnosis? And he said, well, I always knew I was different. But he said, I watched the movie The Accountant with Ben Affleck. And he goes, when he saw the way that he lived, he thought, oh my God, that's me. And then he went in to go get a diagnosis. And sure enough, it fit his, his behaviors and lifestyle and things like that.
That's interesting. And I even know, like on this, the topic of ADHD too, like I know, quite a few adults with ADHD and adults who've been diagnosed, even in my family and things like that. So it's kind of interesting how, and I think it's like one person says it, and even that little bit of word of mouth is like if you feel more comfortable, you're comfortable being open with it, you're willing to talk to other people about it. If it's something that runs in the family, there's a chance that you're talking to your siblings about it, and you find out that maybe maybe more than one of us have been living with this our whole life, and then leading to that too.
Well, and then even Bill Gates in one of his latest interviews, or in his book, he said had he been diagnosed as a child, he was certain he would have been diagnosed with autism. He said when he looks at some of the behaviors now. So I think that's the other thing is the stigma around and the myths around it are are sort of going away and saying, okay, it's not a one size fits all. It's very individualized, and having a different brain does not make you bad or worse off. It's just you have a different brain. Yeah.
Just things can get approached more effectively in different ways, right? Sometimes things aren't naturally set up in society to work for that type of.
Right, and I think that's our job. Our job is to make it more acceptable and I always tell people, it's just people speaking different languages, and we have to just translate that so that people say, oh, I know what you're really saying, and that's okay. I know how that's coming across to me. But it's not one person's side to do that. I think it's both our,
So I want to ask one more thing before we talk about the future maybe, is you did mention the summer programs, and I was just curious to learn more about what those summer programs look like. What are those what is the extra capacity of staff that are coming in, and what are they doing?
So in our summer program, we hire 55 more people in order to manage that program. It's for children with high needs and need a lot more support. These families do not have another place they can send these children because of the complexity of their behaviors and their needs. So we have designed this program years ago, and it's been very well received. So much so that since 2018, the demand for the program has gone up 50%.
Oh, wow.
And last year we had to turn away 48 families, and it was very hard on them. Because if you can imagine these children participating in camps or even just participating in activities outside the house are very, very demanding on the parents, especially if, they're working and they have other responsibilities. So other children, whatever it might be. So the parents who have come to us really rely on this program to keep the child occupied. The other thing we realized, and teachers told us, is that when the children were involved in the program, there was less regression. So their language skills kept up, their motor skills. So the teachers were finding it very helpful for them. The child was coming back to school and was able to engage a lot easier and just be more prepared. And parents have told us that over and over again. When we first started the program, you would register it for by weeks. And so there was times where parents could get 5 weeks. But because of the demand for the program now, the most we can give a parent is 2, 3 maybe from time to time. It's quite intensive because everyone we hire meets with the parent and the teacher. They decide on an individualized goal plan for the child in the summer. The mornings are usually set on doing skills development, some chores, understanding what you're trying to work with a child. And then in the afternoon, we go out into the community, swimming, movement, maybe visiting something. So the child's progress is reported on daily. So parents find it very, very, very helpful. And it's devastating to parents when they can't get in. We have been actively talking to our funders, and we've actively talked to provincial government, and they've listened, and I know they want to help Victor. It's my job to just keep on bringing it to their attention. So, fingers crossed, hopefully we'll see something this year.
Yeah, that would be fantastic, because as soon as you see a wait list like that, it obviously means, it probably means it's working. I think in this case, it's obvious it's working and the need is there. So hopefully those two things show that you can find some funders to step up and help with that.
It's an expensive program because it is a 1-to-1. In some cases, we have a 2-to-1 ratio, depends. So that's why, the cost of employees is the highest cost on that program. But for parents, it feels very safe that they know their children are in good hands and that they'll be safe throughout the program and they can actively engage in everything.
And it's specialized work, right? Like not just anybody can do it. You've got to be
I'm really proud of the program. Really proud of the program.
It sounds fantastic. As far as you kind of mentioned the future, what does the future look like for the center?
So right now, we're really working hard at trying to expand that summer program. And as I said, we've been in to see the ministers, and they're very open with us. They've given us a lot of attention, and I know they want to help. So as I said, if it doesn't work this year, I'm just going to keep on knocking doors. The second thing that we hear from parents over and over and over again is, and caregivers, is I don't know where my child's going to go live. So there's one of the myths about autistic people is they have a learning disability. All have it. That's not true. So if a person is autistic and has a learning disability, they qualify for group homes in Saskatchewan. If you don't have a learning disability, which is an IQ of 70 or above, you do not qualify for group homes.
Okay.
So a lot of these young adults are very dependent on their families still, and there's no opportunity for them to sort of move and be in a place that would support their needs. So again, I come from a bit of a business world, a business background, not for-profit industry, and I thought, well, if we're already sitting in these offices and we're being paid to do our job, why wouldn't we have a mixed-use space where we could do our jobs, but we could also support those living above us? So the goal would be to, after 50 years, we're still renting, so I would love to have our own program space, but also if we were going to do that, why wouldn't we build some apartments that then it could be sort of that transition apartment for the individual who's leaving the home, coming into our supported living. You know, we would have some checks and balances in place to make sure that they were safe, secure, sound, doing what they needed to do. But really it was about promoting independence and helping them build those skills. For me, it makes sense because we're already working there. And, you know, I always say to my staff, we have to wait for somebody to come here to support them. But could you imagine if we were that sort of wraparound services, we were working, but they're also living in the building, and then we could provide sort of that concierge opportunity. The thing about it, Victor, is people say, well, you know, that sounds new and, you know, has this ever been done before? And I say it's been done all the time because we do it with seniors all the time. And we do it when our kids go to university. You know, they go into the residential systems there, and there's all these checks and balances to make sure that they're going to be safe. So why couldn't we do it for these vulnerable communities? A young adult or autistic adult who's having trouble finding work will live on SED benefits, which is about $1,100, $1,200 a month. An apartment's probably going to cost $850, and there's no support within that. So we can change those dynamics. And we could also get in front of it when maybe there's some dysregulation or they need some problem solving, or we could be there and supporting that in very small ways, but the outcome would be very, very high. So to me, it just makes sense.
No, that absolutely makes sense. The thing I like about that is it's innovative, but it's also like already right in front of you, as you mentioned. It is already in
front of us,
It's not like you're thinking of this idea and then we have to figure out how to bring it to fruition. You have a lot of cases where it already exists, but how do we kind of shift it and tailor it to this need? So I really like that. So
it already exists in our society, and this is a vulnerable community. And the thing about it, it can be an invisible disability. So sometimes the response or you know, how a person is perceived is so different. And if we're there just to help guide that a little bit, I think we could again save our economy money, and we can, and that person can have a more robust life, and use it as that transition to even become more independent.
That line right there, I really like, because I feel like a lot of times I feel like there's a misconception within kind of even as you said, the not-for-profit sector, right? That you have to choose. It's like, well, either I'm giving money to help this person or it's for the economy. And the reality is, in many cases, by doing that, you're actually helping this too, because you're circumventing services that are only there for critical needs, and if they're not used, that means you need less of that. It means you need to put less money into services that people are accessing. We had a really interesting story on this show. It was one of the first episodes we did, and it was with the Phoenix Residential Society. They have kind of a, I'm not going to get all the details right, so people can go back and watch it, but the $1 Million Man, and essentially what it was at its core is that there was like an individual who was in so much crisis so often, and between like police services, hospital services, just all the services that were being used at all times, they were like estimating that by actually helping him and getting him to a spot that was stable enough that like there was $1 million that was being spent on an individual, and like to house that person safely, you've suddenly just saved a ton of money.
Hundreds of thousands of dollars, We had an individual who was hospitalized for a year in the psych ward and didn't qualify for group homes. So where does he go?
Exactly.
Right? So, you know, we were able to work out a situation to help that person. But how many stories are there out there like that? And so, as I said, we have these models in place in our society. We just got to shift them a little bit and say, you know, this will work for everyone.
Perfect. And as we start to kind of wrap up, on that note, and the future, is there anything that people can maybe get involved with, or is there something you're going to be putting in place that people can get involved with to help out, to contribute, to volunteer? Like, how can people reach you, and what are some of those needs that you're going to be reaching out to?
How they can reach us is the Autism Resource Centre. One of the challenges that we do have is the Saskatchewan Authority is called Autism Centre, and we're called the Autism Resource Centre, so we get a lot of crossover. But I would say it doesn't matter. We are the nonprofit, they're Saskatchewan Authority. That's one way to reach out to us. You know, just Autism Saskatchewan, Autism Regina, it'll all point towards us. We have we celebrate Autism Month. We're very active on our social media accounts, and we do a lot of education. We're also available for education. If somebody wants us to come in, we've worked with the RCMP, we worked with paramedics, so we are available to help any organization, even if it's just maybe not specifically autism, but maybe it's just neurodiversity in general.
Okay.
So that's another way to reach out to us. We, you know, we have campaigns throughout the year. We usually do a walk every year in August, just to bring families out and to build a little bit of community that way. We haven't started our fundraising for the capital campaign yet. We're in the very early stages. We're just out visiting our governments and trying to get some support that way, but that will be coming. And in our 50th anniversary, 2026, we're really going to hype everything up and try to really highlight autism in the community and how it's helping us in our community, which are many, many ways, not just us as an organization, but individuals as well.
Oh, that's great. It'll be great to see kind of that 50 years of what progress looks like too, even you know, from an organization, but also just from a society. Because as you mentioned, it would have looked so much different 50 years ago than it does today. And then today is going to look different than it does 5-10 years from now too.
Yeah, and hopefully 5-10 years from now, we've built that, you know, that translation tool that then people can work and be together without stereotyping or without saying you're wrong and I'm right.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Well, thanks a lot for coming today. It's been really great chatting with you for this.
Thank you so much, Victor. It's been great. Thanks for all your support from the South Saskatchewan Community Foundation.
Absolutely.
You guys have been really good to us over the years.
Thanks for tuning in today. If you'd like to learn more about how you can make an impact in your own community, visit the South Saskatchewan Community Foundation online at yourlegacyforever.ca.
If you'd like to share your feedback on the program you just watched, contact us today